Do you find in your line of work that when a camera is rolling and something this honest and something that's a documentary form, not scripted, that people will say almost anything when the camera's rolling?
No. Usually, I find that when a camera's going, most people are very much aware of how they're coming across, and even if they appear to be open, even if they appear to be confessional, particularly when they're telling the name of the host, I always know that a person is totally full of it when he starts acting as if the host and he are friends, and they've known each other for years, when they met 6 minutes ago, you know, and they, hello, Dave, yeah, well, I'm glad you asked that. They're always thinking how they're coming across. What is fascinating...
And, you know, it's funny, guys like us, who the hosts, we love that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, and you'll be home watching it with your wife, and you roll it back. You see how James Toback called me Mike there?
Right, yeah.
How cool was that?
And in reality, it's a way of pretending...
I mean, JT.
But it's pretending an intimacy that's not there. Whereas what I think happened with Mike is he's got so many voices going on in his head, which stem from his flip-out in solitary confinement, which he talks about in the movie when he went crazy while he was in solitary, as who wouldn't. The voices are still going, and some of them are stronger than others. And you can often see in the movie that he's struggling to get out one voice clearly. It's as if he's saying to himself, I'm going to crush those, and at least I'll get one out. And he doesn't even have time to censor it, to color it, just to get one out that is clear is enough of a struggle. And often he'll say something that contradicts it 30 seconds later because there are all these other voices that are ready to come out.
Like a good example of that was when you were talking about the rape conviction. He said, you know, I've taken advantage of other women, but just not her.
Right, right.
And what did he, you know, what did he mean by that?
Well, you know, that's I think often he himself isn't sure exactly what he means by what he says. It's coming out, and it's not that he doesn't mean it. It's that it's parallel reality with 6 other realities. He does vehemently deny the rape of Desiree Washington, and in fact, over the years, has always, even when he and I are talking alone, spoken with a kind of vehemence that makes you feel, well, why is he bothering to deny it to me 10 years later? And in fact, one time said to me, if I raped her, then every act of sex I've ever had in my life was also rape, because this was ridiculous.
All right, so you've known him since 1999.
1985.
1985. So did you think after you were in the final editing session, do I really want to do this? Is there anything, you know, was there any part of you that said, I have a conflict of interest here?
No, because I didn't. My goal was to do a portrait, a self-portrait of Mike Tyson filtered through my aesthetic, which is what it is. It gives him the opportunity to portray himself in the same way of the painting. You say Gauguin or Van Gogh or Rembrandt, and they have a self-portrait. Well, that's not a photograph, and it's not necessarily a naturalistic painting. It's their version of themselves. This is Mike Tyson's version of himself, filtered through some techniques that I wanted to use, like split screens, moving images, multiple voices, which to me just enhanced the portrait, because you know he's got multiple personalities, you know he's got a lot of voices going on. So I structured the movie in a way that enhances his story, but basically it's his story in his own words.
All right, last question, almost 2 more questions about the film. You end with the sound of his breathing.
Right.
Now, was that something you discovered in the edit room?
I discovered it when I heard it just before we started shooting. He sat down on the couch in the relaxed position he was in. I positioned myself behind him in a psychoanalyst role where I would just kind of throw out ideas and let him go and go and go. And I put my earphones on, and I hear, and I'm thinking, what is that? And I look over, and Mike had just been mic'd. And I realized that he has breathing problems. And I thought, that's going to be the end of the movie. And I was so happy to find the end of the movie at the beginning.
That's great.
5 minutes later, he mentioned having lung problems as a kid, probably childhood asthma, although he wouldn't go to a doctor to get diagnosed. But he talks about being in the hospital with everyone surrounding him and always having breathing problems. And hoping that he would have early knockouts when he became a fighter because he knew he didn't have the lung capacity to sustain it. It was one of the most fascinating things because I had asthma when I was a kid, and what happens is you're in a constant state of near panic because even though you may not be having an asthmatic attack all the time, you don't know when the next one's going to come. And when you're 3, 4, 5 years old, you don't know what to make of it. All of a sudden you can't breathe. You're going, and people can say it's okay and put steam and all the rest of it, but you're terrified. And I think, I said that to him after we shot that day, has it ever occurred to you that all of that panic and the rage that comes out of it that you've had in your life stems from when you were having trouble breathing when you were a kid? And he said, I hadn't thought about it. He said, but it makes sense to me now.
All right, last question. Bugsy, you wrote the original screenplay for Bugsy. You've directed all of these films. You're really one of the guys credited to be the driving force behind Warren Beatty's career. Did you ever think that a guy you met in 1985 who became the champion of the world boxer, who went off the deep end, who's basically widely known as a psychopath, would bring you an Oscar? Because there's no doubt in my mind you're going to win the Oscar.
I want to hold you morally and financially responsible for that statement. It did not occur to me then. I felt a connection with him, but the first time I thought he will be great on film was when we had lunch after he got out of prison. And I already was going to talk about being in black and white because of his relationship with Wu-Tang Clan, but it was what had happened to him during prison that made him a serious film-worthy subject, because all of a sudden he understood madness, he understood these voices, he understood pain in a way. I think the most harrowing representation of prison I've ever seen or heard is in this movie with Mike Tyson talking about what it's like to be in a maximum security prison. And you think, if that's what Mike Tyson went through in maximum security prison, I'm going to be hiding in Siberia before I let myself go. And that, to me, prepared him to be a truly powerful screen presence, because he, apart from being a pretty good talker and being kind of glib in his own voice and having a wealth of fascinating experiences and being who he was, he now had the suffering to make it a complete picture. And you feel that all through the film. You feel it suffused with a kind of suffering. That wasn't really there until he went through that 3.5 years in prison where, I mean, I don't know whether you felt that, but just hearing the descriptions of what it was like being in there and talking about being in a 6 by 8 foot cell, light flashing in your face 23 hours a day, huddled in a corner. I mean, what could be worse? Talk about Guantanamo, whatever the hell. I mean, what torture is worse than what he went through in maximum security, and what all prisoners do in maximum security prisons?
One thing I can say about this interview, it's like pulling teeth with you. It's just very difficult to get you to answer any questions. All right, that's it for this edition of Fox Fight Game. This is James Toback. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The movie's called Tyson. It's a documentary, and Two Girls and a Guy comes out on Blu-ray this month.
No, September.
September morn.
Yeah.
All right, until next time, I'm Mike Straka. Enjoy the fights.